Yes, so I'm saying there's something called effective revision plan. And in this effective revision plan, this is where you apply the 20% read and the 80% reward or recite, you may want. 20% read means you spend more time reading. You spend less time reading, and 80% reward means you spend more time putting what you have read into your own words. Remember, you're talking about revising or reading effectively when there are no exams. We're talking of how do you read now? And by June, you will still be remembering what you have read. Most students make the mistake. Every time they sit down, they do what I call 100% reading. What does that involve? They're just transferring notes from their textbooks to their notebooks, not thinking anything about it. It's an assignment. You are told to write notes. So 100% of time they sit down, it's just writing, writing, writing. And whatever they are writing, they are just copy-pasting with their pen from what is in the textbook to the book. That one is wasted because they will write those notes. And teachers, you have said, never ask students for notes in exam. Teachers ask for questions. So when you write notes, you have not prepared yourself for the exam. When you write notes, you've not even understood those notes. Because if you understand them, answering questions from them is easy. So we are talking of effective revision plan now that you have no exam, is you move from 100% reading, you reduce the time to 80% of rewarding and 20%. And that's why I'm giving you the example of if you have 10 minutes, just an example. What you can read in 2 minutes, you spend around 8 minutes trying to think about it and rewarding or putting it in your own words. The first thing to do is when you read something, you try to put it down using your own words. And if I remember, we mentioned that the best way to put a sentence in your own words is to think of how do you start answering that question from using the last word as the first word. So if you have a question like you're told, the rocks which form, I don't know from what are called igneous rocks, then you can start your sentence. Igneous rocks are. And then you write that sentence starting with your own word. After you have done that, 8 minutes are not gone. I've said teachers never ask students to write notes for exams. They translate the notes into questions. So the best thing you do is that once you have written your notes, pause a bit and ask yourself, how can this sentence or these concepts be put in the form of a question? Form a question from your notes. And this should not be at the back of your notebook. It should be next to the note you have done. It's not an extra thing. It's not something rough, done in another rough book. It is part of the note. So you write your note using your own words, and then you form the question using those notes. You don't stop at the forming the question. 8 minutes are not yet over. You try to answer that question. Answer the question you formed using the notes you wrote. And then Now that you have revision materials, this is the point to go to the revision materials. Remember, I've said, don't start with the revision materials. That is the greatest mistake students are doing. They start with the revision books before they read the content. Revision book should come after you have understood the content, you have put it in your own one, you have formed questions from that content, you have answered the question. That is now when you go to the extra questions from your revision materials. You answer them, and now the final is you reframe those questions using the answers provided. Like the one you have said. In the question was, what is the name given to the rocks formed what? The answer was igneous rocks. So you reframe that question. Explain how igneous rocks are formed. State examples of igneous rocks. So you reframe your own. Reason is, why are you going to this extent? Mostly teachers know you have the revision books with you, and they don't want to leave questions direct from the books. They want to reframe it so that it doesn't look like it was direct from the revision book. So they will reframe it slightly. So if you spend more time doing that, when you go to the exam, you will find it easier. I don't know whether we are together.
Mm.
So how have you understood the 20% read and the 20% reward?
On how I've understood is that the 100%, like, it's just copying notes from the book to the exercise book, and the 20 and 80% can help, because the 20%, like, it's just reading like for like 10 from like for only like a short time. Then the 80% is like spending more time thinking and writing on what I have read. By, for example, like if I was reading about the igneous rocks for like 10 minutes, and then now I just write like for the 80%, I just like think of what I've written for my own question, just reading, just like, and writing what like setting my own questions, writing on how I've understood it best, and yeah.
Good. And at what point do you go to the revision materials?
When just to check if they are like they're the same like questions that I said.
Good. To check whether the questions you have done are like the ones in the book. The textbook, the revision materials are set by experts. But you start with your simple questions of the way you have understood the concept. You answer them. Then you go now to the more expert questions from revision materials and check whether you can answer those questions from what you have read. That is great. That's basically what it means to do 20% read and 80% rewarding. And then make sure you always review. Yeah? Review. You don't read and pack the books. If you read and pack the books to look for them again the next time you are reading the subject, it is a waste of time. You keep on, when you read something, think about it over and over. If you have read some biology digestion, think about it even as you eat. If you've read some geography, think about them even as you walk out there in the no. What can you relate? What you have learned. If you learn some agriculture, what can you relate? If you whatever mathematics you have learned, can you relate it to the environment? As you take tea, if you have been learning about volume, can you relate the container you are taking tea with, the cup and the like, to what you've learned, that volume you have learned? If you are cleaning the house, can you relate the surface area you learned to that the floor. If the floor has the tiles, can you now start seeing the surface area in it? Relate what you learn with what you are doing. And that is how learning becomes effective. And finally, you think about what you have learned before falling asleep. Which reason have you given for this?
Um, the reason for reviewing is to so that I can have a better I can just understand on what I've read the night so that it can stay in my long-term memory.
Good. When you don't think about what you have learned, it doesn't go to long-term memory. You wake up the following day when you have forgotten. So to ensure that you have transferred all what you are learning during the day, you do the right thing when you are reading, spend more time rewarding, less time reading, review, think about it over and over. Before you fall asleep, make sure you revisit your academics. And especially now you are at home. When you're in school, it's very easy because you are from prep to bed. Now, most of the evenings, you are not reading. You are maybe watching, listening to the stories in the family, doing so many things. Is that tendency to completely forget to review what you learned during the day before falling asleep. Don't forget that, and you notice the difference. Are we together?
Mm.
Yes, that is great. And I want to believe it's going to be of great help to you, even as you revise at this hour, waiting for the exam, which you don't even know the date. But it is necessary you start revising now.